This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. With your host, Tyson Gifford and William Roerick. Episode 146, recorded March 1st, 2018. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I am your host, Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host here at TVE, William Roerick.
Hello.
So, today we are going to be talking about a recently published article I put up on the site that's going over the spring preview. So it's basically what shows are coming up in spring. Obviously, we're not going to be covering everything that's in it because it's too much. There's also going to be some stuff that we probably would have covered, but we're not in this podcast just because it hasn't been given a date yet. So there's still stuff filling out. Like if you look at the spring preview, there's a lot of stuff in March, a little bit less in April, and then very little in May. That's just because as time goes on, that release dates will fill out. It'll fill out. So there's some stuff that we just don't know when it's coming. So we can't talk about that yet in the spring preview because we don't know that it's coming in spring.
Right, exactly.
But we picked out a good number of shows that we're going to talk about. Some because they're good, some because they're interesting, some because they're bad, and some because they make a parallel with something else. So we'll go over that and talk kind of just about what's interesting that's coming up. Then we're going to be talking about The Magicians. We're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 8, 6 short stories about magic. And that's going to be it for this podcast. Just a note before we get started on our main topic, next week we are going to be covering the second half of The Tick. We covered the first half before. It's somewhere in our archives of podcasts. You can see those on YouTube. And we're going to, the week after that, we're going to talk about Jessica Jones, which is actually coming out next Thursday. It's coming out a day earlier than shows usually debut on Netflix. Like the big shows usually debut on Friday, but this one will be on Thursday. So by the time we do the next podcast, I'll probably have already seen most of Jessica Jones. But we'll be talking about it the week after that. And instead of just kind of going over the whole story and summarizing it, we're just going to kind of do impressions and talk about what we think about that, talk about The Magicians some more. And so that's it. That's what's coming up ahead. So let's get started on this show. So like I said, we're doing spring preview. For the sake of sanity, we're not starting it at the start of actual spring. We're starting it March 1st through May 31st. So just that 3-month period, that's how we designate like spring for this site. So starting on March 1st, right on the first day of spring, a day that's already come. That's today as we're recording it. It's March 1st as we're recording this, but Atlanta has come back to FX. This is a show that like I liked it a lot, but I wasn't able to just keep up with it just because of, peak TV, too many shows. And I wasn't able to keep up with it, but I've been really thinking recently about getting back in and getting through the first season and starting the second season. I reset it to tape. I think I'm going to go through and make some hard choices in what I'm currently watching and get rid of some other shows I'm watching to make some space for Atlanta because it is a really good show and I feel like bad that I'm not watching it.
Right.
This is Donald Glover, creates and stars in the show. I'm kind of amazed at how much he's taken off since he was in Community. Yeah. He actually kind of really got his start as a writer on 30 Rock. And then he kind of blew up with Community. It was like he was one of the kind of key characters or key actors on that show and kind of really started blowing up there. And then, his rap career started really taking off and he started kind of doing all sorts of different projects. Now he's going to be playing what's his name? I can't even think of his name in the Han Solo movie.
Yeah, Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, that's right. I drew a blank there. Sorry. But yeah, so he's going to be playing Lando in the new Solo movie. And Atlanta is kind of like a huge hit for him. It's really taken off. People are blown away by it. It's an awards darling. And it really is a unique show. It's just kind of weird and different, and it takes risks and in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So it's a good show, and I'm eager to get back into it. By the time this podcast is up, it's already back. Season 2 on that. Moving on March 7th. This is one you put on your list of shows that you're looking forward to, is Hard Sun, which is coming to Hulu.
It looks interesting. Kind of odd, I guess. The world is ending, and it shows like, I don't know, I guess it's like about this cop, and I don't know, it seems like they get really desperate.
It seems like they're trying to hide that the world's ending because they just fear that everything's going to slip into chaos.
Oh yeah, probably.
I mean, because probably what would happen.
They talk about like this Hard Sun file. The trailer, I guess, doesn't do too good of a job of conveying the plot. I'm guessing it's probably a bit too high concept to adequately explain in a trailer.
It's interesting. It's super high concept. I've always kind of had like a bit of an aversion to things where it's like you already kind of know the end, like everyone dies kind of thing.
Right.
But it's worked before. There was a movie called Seeking a Friend for the End of the World that had Steve Carell in it.
Right.
That was really good, like a really heartwarming, touching movie about basically the end of the world.
Well, because the movie, it isn't about whether or not they're going to survive the end of the world.
Yeah.
It was about
coming to terms with everything in their lives.
It, what are they going to do? And yeah, it was a good movie. I enjoyed that movie.
So it's not that it can't be done, and it definitely looks good in the trailer. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But there's a few like super high concept stuff on this list that we're going to be going over that I have similar concerns for in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know if Hard Sun is going to be good. I don't know if I'd enjoy it, but it certainly looked interesting.
Yeah, and it's definitely it's a big show for Hulu. So
yeah, it's a big show for Hulu. So Hulu is they're stepping up their game.
Yeah, I've actually liked quite a bit of their stuff. It's still got, like in that small quirky category. It's not quite as like mainstream as like the Netflix stuff is, but
Stephen King adaptation with James Franco.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and then they did what was it? The Marvel's Runaways. I thought was pretty good.
Yep.
And that one what was the one with Seth Rogen produced with Josh Hutcherson, that Future Man.
Oh, Future Man. Yep.
That was really funny and just very crass and like it was good. Let's see as Hulu develops. They're kind of in that state that Netflix was in a couple of years ago, before Netflix really had like super high regard shows.
Right.
So we'll have to see if they kind of take that same path and end up being like a real strong Netflix affair. I mean, they do have like the awards darling of all the streaming networks with Handmaid's Tale. So speaking of Netflix, March 8th, Jessica Jones. That's a big one for us. Always is.
We're going to be covering that for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're going to be talking about that. We already mentioned in 2 weeks, we're going to be covering Jessica Jones. I'm probably going to live tweet again. I've done this kind of with all of the Marvel shows since, I think since Daredevil season 2, or I don't know, somewhere around there is when I started like live tweeting. So, before that comes out, I'll put up an article with all the kind of relevant hashtag information for anybody who might want to join me in live tweeting as, Jessica Jones season 2 goes through. We'll have to see if it's going to be up to the same quality as the first season and Daredevil, or if it's going to be kind of in the vein of where it's been kind of a little bit disappointing recently with Iron Fist and Defenders and Luke Cage.
Yeah, we'll see where it falls on the quality line now that the Superman storyline is over.
Yeah, it's hard to follow up a storyline that's so deeply personal like that.
Right.
It's like, where do you go after that? How do you stay like really emotionally relevant after that, So we'll have to see where they go with it. Next up, March 16th on my block comes to Netflix. I wanted to bring this up for one reason and one reason only. And that's because it's another show, like Everything Sucks, about kids that are just entering high school. And it's at that age, it's that coming of age thing. The difference is that this looks way better.
I don't know if I'm interested. I'm just not interested in another coming of age high school show, I guess.
Yeah, it's the thing that grabbed you with Everything Sucks before you found out it sucks was the 90s nostalgia. That was kind of like the angle that into your heart that it could have taken. But
you know what's hilarious about Everything Sucks?
Nothing.
Saved by the Bell is a more genuine representation of high school in the 90s than Everything Sucks.
Yeah. On my block though, have you ever seen the movie Dope?
No, I haven't.
Dope is this movie. It's kind of a coming of age high school movie where like the main characters are kind of like in a very like gang area, and they end up with like a large amount of like cocaine. I think it's cocaine. I don't remember correctly. Well, it's a drug. They have a large amount of, and they're caught up in all things, and it's been compared to like Adventures in Babysitting, but like more serious. Mm-hmm. In the sense that like it's this adventure kind of, and like how they're dealing with this and getting through it. I get a little bit of that in On My Block, you know, with just kind of like the tone of the show and how it's set up. I compare it to Everything Sucks, but it's not like a 90s nostalgia show. Right. It's just straight up like modern high school. But I'm a little interested in where it's going to be, because it definitely looks like it actually has characters, which Everything Sucks didn't. So yeah, I just thought I wanted to draw a parallel to that because they're both Netflix shows.
Sure, yeah.
You put Krypton on your list on Sci-Fi. Is this something that you're interested in, or that it's just that you want to talk about it because we're in DC Overload?
Not interested in this. It looks like garbage, but like I just kind of why does this exist?
It's this DC Overload, you know. It's like
it is DC Overload. It's like there's too much, and
it's like some of it's connected, some of it's not, and it's like just such a mess. I
watched the trailer, and they're like trying to make it exciting. They're trying to make like, look at all these Superman references, and I'm like, yes, but this is boring.
The only interesting part I saw in the trailer, where I was like, oh, that's like a little angle that I didn't think was going to be there, is that there's like some traveler from the future referring back to the fact that the guy has to be able to do things to set up the future correctly so that Superman will come into existence.
Right.
And that's like the only thing that like I didn't know that was going to be part of the show, and so that makes the show a little bit more relevant, because it's like, oh, okay, so it is about Superman in this way, you know. It's not just like some prequel that nobody wanted, you know. There is some kind of tie into actual Superman stuff, but it's a very weak tie, and I'm just not into, like, I think Krypton is super boring. Like the planet, not the show. I haven't seen the show. I think anytime I've ever seen Krypton depicted, it's always bored me.
Well,
it never feels real. It just always feels like
it's a plot device, right?
Yeah.
It's a plot device. It explains, it exists as an explanation for why Superman is who Superman is, why he can fly, why he's invincible.
But it's never been interesting. Like, you look at like some of the different planets they've had in, like, you know, Marvel comics and things, and it's like they'll actually make like a civilization that's kind of interesting. And Krypton was like, it just never has been interesting.
Right, because it was never set up to be interesting. It was an explanation. It was like, okay.
Which makes it not a great idea to make a whole show about it.
Yeah. It was like, okay, we got this guy. He can fly. He's super strong. Bullets bounce off of him. But why? Oh, he came from another planet and it exploded. It doesn't exist. So there, boom, done. You know,
it's just not like a believable world, and it's not interesting, and it's hard to imagine that any person would love the world, because it always just seemed like a vague, dark version of like ancient Rome around the time of its collapse or something.
Right.
And it's just never been interesting, you know. So it's I don't know. I have no interest in watching this on Sci-Fi.
They could probably do a compelling drama about a world that is ending.
It's called Hard Sun, and it's coming to Hulu.
Yeah, it's called, exactly. Yeah.
And it's our world.
It's our world.
Yeah, I don't know. It just does not look good to me. I'm kind of getting sick of DC in general.
I can tell.
Yeah. Let's talk about something good. So
Yes.
March 25th, there's 3 shows coming on, all of which look great. 1 returning show, 2 new shows. But starting off the list is Barry on HBO.
Yes.
This is Bill Hader stars in this, and he's a hitman who on one of his missions ends up like encountering an actor's workshop. Like an improv group or something like that. Yeah, and just becomes like obsessed with it, just loves it. And it's like his new calling in life.
Yes.
But he's a hitman. And so that's a complication.
Yeah, that's a complication. And it looks hilarious. It stars Bill Hader. Bill Hader is hilarious.
Yeah.
Henry Winkler is in this. Normally not a big Henry Winkler fan, but he was good in this trailer.
It's also got that guy, I can never remember the actor's name, but he's a character actor and he's in a ton of stuff. It's the guy, he was in Office Space. He's the guy with the stapler.
Yes.
Down the building.
Stephen Root.
Stephen Root, yes. And he's been in he does like the voice of Bill on King of the Hill.
Yes.
Stephen Root is amazing. I love him. He can play so many different types, but yeah, this is going to be good because he's going to be a little bit dangerous, but it's a comedy, so it'll be funny too. So I think that's going to be he's a good fit for that.
Good show. Good reason to have HBO.
Yeah, definitely. It looks good. I'm excited for that. As you mentioned, 3 shows. There's a returning show coming on March 25th too. This is a show that normally debuts right alongside Game of Thrones and just runs concurrent with Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones isn't coming back.
Coming back this year.
Yes. So they're just putting it out, in March now, which is Silicon Valley. I don't think you've seen Silicon Valley, have you?
I have not. Wow, it's like on 5 seasons and I haven't even watched a single episode.
Oh, it's hilarious. It is so funny.
And
it's one of those shows that like people in Silicon Valley dislike it, not because it's not funny, but because it's too real and it just depresses them.
Oh, really? Wow.
It depresses them because it's making fun of Silicon Valley and they watch it and they're just like, oh God, it's too true. Like it's too accurate.
Oh God, that's so true.
So yeah, Silicon Valley is absolutely hilarious. They actually got rid of one of their main cast members has left the show, so it'll be interesting to see.
I heard
T.J.
about
Miller.
I heard about the issues surrounding T.J. Miller.
Yeah, he left the show. He left it on his own. He didn't leave. He wasn't kicked off or anything like that. He just decided to leave on his own. He's had some other issues come up since then, but he left on his own. But because he was more interested in doing other things like Deadpool 2 and a bunch of other movies and stuff he's been doing. It's going to be interesting to see the show without him because he was such a huge part of the show. He wasn't one of the main characters, but he was such an integral part of the comedy of the show. But that being said, in the first season of Silicon Valley, there was a character that was like amazing and just felt like irreplaceable. And the actor who played that character died during the filming of season 1. So they had to they basically wrote him out of the show and just kind of ignored his character for a while. And then in season 2 kind of addressed it that the character also died. And the show has remained good, in a way that I wouldn't have thought possible. Because the one character, and it wasn't a main character either, but he was just so pitch perfect. He was like the kind of standout in the early episodes of Silicon Valley. But by the time the actor had died and we didn't have that character on, by that time the show had found its footing with the main characters.
Mm-hmm,
and that was what you really needed. Once you had that chemistry was working and the bits were working really well and they had everything kind of established right, you didn't need a character like that to hold the show together anymore. So they've been able to kind of go through an issue like this before. So yeah, it looks really funny. The trailer looks hilarious. So I'm excited for it. And the last show coming back on March 25th, and also probably I think the best trailer of all the ones that I posted on this article is Trust, which is coming to FX. Donald Sutherland's in it. Brendan Fraser as a narrator, I guess.
No, what is this? Because I totally skipped over this. I didn't even watch the trailer.
Okay, so to basically summarize the show, it's about this rich family, and then this one kind of member of the family he's kind of like the Paris Hilton generation type member of the family, just kind of parties and does whatever. He, I think, is involved in some kind of a scam to try to steal money from his from the patriarch of the family. He's like his grandfather, I think, but ends up really being kidnapped. And so it's just like a drama about that. And then this patriarch of the family just being completely unwilling to like pay anything. And it's just kind of about like, you know, the distrust and stuff involved in like big money.
Right.
But it's FX. So it's got that like strong pedigree to it. Great trailer. I think it was the second trailer that I have posted for the series. Both trailers are good, but trailer number 2 is like, it's got that song, that old one, like, if I was a rich man, you know? It's got that song and it just like fits so perfectly into the trailer. It's just a great trailer. I'd recommend, if nothing else, just watch the trailer because it's
I'll check it out.
Good. And hey, Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, he's good.
You know? The next day, March 26th, The Terror on AMC. So before we talk about the show itself, this is based loosely on a real story.
Oh yeah. It's based on real history.
Yeah, there were 2 ships that got lost in the Arctic, I believe, and they just disappeared. One of them was found, like, I think, I don't know, like half a century later or something. Yeah. And the other ship was just found, like, I think 10 years ago or something, maybe less.
Like a few years ago.
So it's always been like, you know, okay, well, these ships, they got caught. And what really happened, what's clearly obvious from the investigations into the corpses and the ships and stuff, is that some level of cannibalism occurred. They were just stuck in the ice and they died. Right. They just died a horrible death. Well, they were adapting this. And at first I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's going to be kind of interesting for a bit. But as a TV series? But they're taking a different tack. They're taking a different approach here.
Completely different.
They're kind of adding,
They're adding supernatural elements to it.
Yeah. But I think what really makes this all work is that you have this like limited scope by them, like that they're kind of like they're on these ships and they're stuck in the ice. There's not much. You can't like go to new cities and show a bunch of like different locations. So you're like really kind of tightened in on a small area. But where they're making up for that is just like the production values look really good, you know? The performances look really strong. They have some really good actors involved in it. That's what's going to make this show work, if anything does, you know? And then the supernatural premise is just, it looks pretty scary, actually.
It does. It looks good. It looks real good.
Yeah. I'm kind of looking forward to this. And when I first heard about it, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be something I'll be interested in. But now that I've kind of seen the trailer and the kind of supernatural element and just kind of seeing the footage from the show, it looks good.
Yes.
So the next show on our list here is The Crossing on ABC. And so the reason I'm bringing this show up isn't so much for itself, but this is like a kind of show that we haven't had in a couple of years. And this is like, what the best way to describe it is, it's like the Lost copycat show that doesn't get it. Like the show looks like it might actually be a good show. Like it might actually have some compelling drama and stuff. But like they even cite Lost. They even say like from the network that brought you Lost, as if like the network really has anything to do with it.
Network that brought, okay.
But the main thing is that
from the network that funded and aired Lost.
Just the main thing though is that remember after Lost debuted and all of a sudden people were like freaking out over Lost and they were like, oh god, it's so good and like we need our own show. Like let's do this one about a boat and it's going to have aliens and then let's do this one where everybody saw the future and the whole world and
oh my god,
let's do this one.
Yeah. I remember
it's like everything was all about these high concept things and they all completely missed the point.
Yeah.
And that's that with Lost, it was just a plane crash. That's all it was. And all this kind of supernatural stuff was just kind of coming in from the corners.
It was.
You know, like,
Lost,
and that's what made it good.
You know what made Lost good? Lost was first and foremost a character drama.
Yeah, it was about characters, stranded on an island and who these characters were and who they became. And it was like about that. And all the kind of like higher concept stuff was just
about smoke monsters and hatches with buttons you have to press. It was like that. That was
just window dressing.
Window dressing, yes.
That was just like little things to make it a little bit more exciting. You know, like
the flashbacks existed. The flashbacks existed because to do deep dives into the characters to find out who they were, what made them tick, you know, to make them more interesting.
Yeah. and it's like, yeah, there a lot of what made Lost really fun and exciting to watch were these kind of like genre, like high concept things things. Like
Right.
a lot of people cite like the best episode of Lost, or one of the best early on, as being like Walkabout, which was
Right.
this idea that like, oh, this character we've seen this whole time was in a wheelchair before he was, how is that, you know?
And
And
you
it's
know
that
what?
kind of like,
That wouldn't have worked if you didn't give a shit about Locke in the first place, right? They had to
exactly.
make you care about Locke for that episode to work, you know?
They had to give you a notion of who this person is and then shatter it.
And then shatter, exactly, which a lot of the copycats, you know, they didn't. They focused on the concept and the characters were flat and boring. Like who cares about this person? Oh.
So on the topic of this show itself.
Future, but who the fuck cares? This person's boring as shit.
On the topic of the show itself, like we don't know. This show, for all we know, could have really great characters in it. You know,
Right.
It's always just the trailer, but it just has that same feeling, like that same concept feeling of like, we've seen so many shows that copied this format from Lost, you know, or tried to do the Lost thing, but just kind of missed the main idea. And that's what this feels so much like. But, you know, who knows? I mean, this could be a great show. We don't really know. It's just like, God, it feels so much like a show from, you know, 10 years ago when Lost was at the height of its popularity. And
it's so weird to see like ABC like still trying to recapture that Lost magic like all these years later. Like damn, they just haven't given up, have they?
and they just don't get it.
They just don't get it. Yeah. They just, yeah.
Yeah, so that's The Crossing on ABC. It's not a condemnation of the show. For all we know, this could be the best show on TV. It could be right up there with Lost. We have no idea.
Lost. You don't know.
We have no idea. We're mainly commenting about the show. What makes the show interesting for us to talk about is the fact that it's this format of a show that we've become very familiar with over the years. And as big fans of Lost, it's something that's kind of irked and frustrated us. And that's like why this is like an interesting show to talk about, is just because of that. Cause like on the merits of the show itself, like I have no idea if it's going to be good or not.
Right. Exactly.
Next show on the list, April 3rd, The Last OG, comes to TBS.
Tracy
Morgan.
Tracy Morgan's always good. I like him.
Yeah. It's his return to TV after he had that bad accident where he got hit by like a Walmart truck.
Yeah, Walmart truck. Fuck Walmart.
But yeah, he had that bad accident and it had a long recovery for it, and now he's back. It's exciting to have him back, just in general, to have Tracy Morgan back doing anything.
Oh yeah. It's fantastic.
But the show looks great. It looks really funny from the trailer. And it's just another thing about this is TBS, and TBS has been killing it with like high concept comedies.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, People of Earth and Search Party and all these shows, it's really good high concept comedies. This is another one. So yeah, TBS is really making kind of a name for themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's, The Last OG, April 3rd. On the same day, an even bigger show, something I think we're way more excited about, both of us, I believe. And that's season 2 of Legion.
Oh God, this is gonna be amazing. Well, hopefully. I mean, first,
it's either gonna be amazing or we're gonna be very disappointed.
Yeah, because that first season was that's a very tough act to follow, right? Yeah. So
they got the talent. They got Noah Hawley as the showrunner.
Noah Hawley. I mean, and then I said the same thing after the first season of Fargo, and then the second season ended up being better. So
yeah.
So same might hold true here. Noah Hawley is very talented. So
definitely, he takes risks. He tries like all sorts of weird experimental things. They had like that. God, there's like a whole chunk of an episode that was like a silent film, if you remember.
Yeah,
it was great. That all the stuff with Aubrey Plaza's character.
Yeah,
when it became revealed like who she really was, and she had that like big dance sequence, and like the kind of like the way that had that 70s vibe, where like there were contradictory things as to where the setting was, like where you're not sure it's the 70s, but it sure has a 70s vibe to it.
Yep.
All of that. There's so much there, and there's so much that's like another thing that he did expertly on Legion is like I said, with the whole kind of like 70s 70s vibe, but not really committing to it being the 70s.
Right. I really
that aspect of it's just those little mysteries. It's like, even if they're like tiny mysteries, just in the tone where it's just like,
I really like the fact that like the period of time it was set in was like ambiguous.
Yeah.
Like, there was really nothing that stood out to where you can definitely say, oh, this is taking place there.
I mean, there's a clear 70s influence.
Clear
like
70s
clear what it's going for, but then there's other things that directly contradict that.
Yeah, there are.
And then you're like, okay, what is this?
Like, what's going on? It's interesting.
And like things like that are really cool because they kind of keep you a little bit on your toes. Just the fact that they were able to do this right, that they were able to take a character like Legion and do him right.
Right. Exactly.
Is impressive. And yeah, I mean, the trailer for the trailer we have, it's actually just a teaser. It's just Aubrey Plaza talking to the camera, really. Is everything I loved about Legion, like in condensed into like 15 seconds or something.
Yes.
so it just has me excited for when it comes back.
I never thought an X-Men TV show would be my favorite sort of like Marvel or DC TV show, but it is.
Oh yeah, this is easily the best comic book show.
Yeah, easily the best.
Yeah, I mean, there's been talk when the Netflix ones came out. No,
this is better
when Runaways came out, it was like, oh, they have this cool angle. No. Legion is like just light years ahead of all of them. So far ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The closest thing would be like the kind of comic book shows that you don't even normally associate with comic book shows. They just happen to be based on comic book, like maybe like Preacher or something. Yeah. It's like the closest, but Legion's even significantly ahead of that, in my opinion. So,
in my opinion too, yeah.
So it's just really good. I'm excited for this to come back. April 11th, The Expanse. This is another case where there isn't a lot of information in the trailer. The trailer's just like a tease.
I'm behind on this because I don't think I watched season 2.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that kind of happened with just the flood of shows we were trying to keep track of.
Yeah, there was just too much we were watching, and so I couldn't devote time to it.
I think you and I both kind of prioritized The Magicians.
Yes.
And I was able to hang in with The Expanse, but I think, you ended up falling behind. I think you started season 2 and then you fell off.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to this. You get to look forward to season 2 at some time. I mean, there's not a lot to say. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's like a few things that happen at the end of season 2 that are just like, holy fuck, you know?
Right.
So I'm eager to kind of see like where those go in season 3. And yeah, I mean, its Expanse is just amazing science fiction on TV. I'd say of the sci-fi shows on TV, the two best right now are Altered Carbon on Netflix and The Expanse on Sci-Fi.
That's fair. Yeah.
Both really good. April 13th, Relic comes to Cinemax. My main interest in this series, the teaser really doesn't tell you much. It just kind of like, I wrote the concept in the byline and then the teaser just kind of shows a little bit of that too. It's just a teaser. The concept's really good, but I think the main thing for me is who's making it. This show is made by a team of brothers who made a show that was on Stars called The Missing that was like a really, really good, just well done show with a really good drama. This is like the most high concept thing that these two brothers have done, this Relic, which is, it's basically killer spelled backwards.
Oh, okay.
And that's the premise of the show basically, is that this is a story about a guy who has been physically maimed and emotionally scarred by this killer that he's tracking. And he finally catches him, but that's where the show starts. Is that he's caught this killer, and then it goes backwards. Like it starts to show you, okay, well this killer was caught, and then it starts to go through the hunt for the killer, and it's going backwards further and further, and it's gonna like start building out the puzzle as you start to see like how everybody came into play in the story.
Sure.
Which can work sometimes, can not work other times. Based on the quality of The Missing though, which was done by the same people, I think this is gonna be a case where it works. So yeah, just really good high concept murder mystery. But on the same day, there's a much bigger show coming, Lost in Space to Netflix. So Will, you happen to have an appropriate character name.
Yes, Will Robinson. Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Did you watch the old Lost in Space show? Like, I mean, obviously you didn't watch it when it was on, but did you watch it like in reruns or anything?
Yeah, I watched it when it was brand new. I'm that old now. I never did see the show. I never did see reruns. I don't think.
Did you see the movie with like, it was like Gary Oldman was in it?
I saw the movie with Gary Oldman. As far as the original series, I don't think I've ever seen them air reruns of that.
I think they aired them on USA, like when I was a kid. I used to watch
Probably.
That was back when like USA's like highest profile thing was like USA Up All Night with like Rhonda and Gilbert Godfrey.
Yes. I remember that Up All Night.
It was that era of USA, and they used to play Lost in Space in the afternoons.
More of a Nickelodeon kid, like so I'd watch Nick at Night, what they'd show, and they showed like a lot of old shows on Nick.
Dobie Gillis and
Dobie Gillis, yeah. But I don't think they've ever once showed Lost in Space on Nickelodeon. So
no, that was USA, I believe.
Yeah, that was USA. So never seen the original, but I'm aware of it through pop culture osmosis.
Yeah. Danger, Will Robinson.
Yes. I did watch the movie with Gary Oldman and Lacey Chabert, and I forget who else is in that.
Didn't that have Joey in it from Friends?
Oh yeah, Joey from Friends was in that. Yeah, that's right.
Matt LeBlanc,
yeah, he was in that too. So I did see that, and this actually caught me by surprise because I had heard nothing about a new Lost in Space until I was on YouTube a couple days ago, and it just randomly popped up for me. I was like, what? And so I watched this, and I was like, okay, I had no idea this was a thing.
Yeah, decent cast too.
Yeah, decent cast too.
Yeah, and it seems to be a fairly high budget Netflix show. Not the trailer is just like a tease. You can't really get a lot from it, but besides just you already know the Lost in Space concept.
Yeah, the trailer just announces it's basically this is Lost in Space. Although I didn't see the robot.
I think you hear it. I think you hear the Danger, Will Robinson or something.
I think you hear it. Yeah. They don't show the robot in the trailer. Maybe they're trying to keep that a surprise. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like a big clunky looking robot like the old one wouldn't really make sense in this kind of show now.
No, they wouldn't.
We're kind of past that point, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the show turns out. If it's if it keeps kind of the sense of adventure, because the original series was a bit Star Trek-ish in like the idea of like adventure and exploration.
They could kind of like make it like Lost.
Yeah,
yeah,
they could. It'll be interesting to see where they go with it. Like I said, pretty decent cast. The guy playing the father on the show, he was on Black Sails on Stars. He was really good in that. So yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. But yeah, I mean it's pretty high profile. I mean there were a lot of reports when this was coming out. There were a lot of reports about it being like a fairly high budget show too. So it'll be interesting to see when like we get something more concrete, like a real trailer or footage or scenes, whatever. But that brings us to perhaps the biggest. We talked about big budget, probably the biggest budget on this whole list show for this season, which is on April 22nd. Westworld returns to HBO after being off the air for like 2 years. So
yeah, it's finally back. Season 1 was crazy. It ended crazy.
The cast on season 1.
Yes. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. When this comes back, this is almost going to be a completely different show because the way season 1 ended, like almost all the major human characters were killed off, and now it's like mostly like the robots So like I think I ended season 1 with wondering where they were going to go with this, or like what they were going to do with this next. And I think that's the big question lingering over season 2 now, is where is this going to go?
Yeah, this is definitely, it's one of those cases where it's like there are a lot of missteps they could take.
Right.
And there's a lot of like stuff that's kind of up in the air, and you know, they did a really good job with, they kind of did this like unreliable narrator thing with the Dolores character, where you kind of didn't know what time she was in, and if she was acting according to her programming or if she was breaking free from it. There was a lot of questions about that throughout the first season. That was a big part of the drama. Well, now it's like everything's kind of like come to a head, you know, like the robots have taken over the park. This is, you know, she knows who she is now. There's the mystery's gone, you know, like there was that big, the worst kept secret through the whole first season about, you know, the Man in Black and him being this other character that we see that from a different time period.
Yeah. Again, that mystery is solved.
The
whole displaced time period thing, that's solved. They can't do that again.
We kind of know everything about the two kind of inventors that created all of these robots. That was a big mystery. We kind of know all that.
Everything they set up was solved in season 1, to the point where if this show was only that one season, it would completely work as a self-contained piece. Like, you wouldn't be like, there wouldn't be anything really unresolved.
Yeah. It actually is like, would be remarkably similar to the plot of the movie Ex Machina, which kind of did like a very similar thing, but like as like this concept movie, and the way it ends, kind of similar tonally, a little different, but you know, similar. Yeah, exactly. It's like, where do you go with this now? Like, how do you take this concept and move forward with it?
Yeah.
I mean, the trailers and stuff, the Super Bowl commercial they released looks amazing. You know, that's the one that's up on the site. It looks really good, but it's like, there's like no context really, you know, like everything that's showing there could be like in the first 5 minutes and it would make sense. Right.
Exactly.
You know? So it's like, well, where do you go storyline wise? And there were a few like little kind of open threads. I think mostly around the Maeve character. There were a few kind of like little open threads about her character that you could explore, but they're going to have to bring in like whole new plot threads, you know, to kind of like make this interesting.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm excited for it.
I'm excited to see where they go with this. Absolutely. Like, man,
I still remember talking about like the first couple of episodes on the podcast, and just, man, some of it was pretty mind blowing, you know?
Some of it was, yeah. I ultimately felt season 1 was uneven, and I think it started as a better show than it ended up being. But maybe they can redeem some of that with season 2.
I have a little bit of a theory on that.
Yeah.
Cause I've talked to people who have watched the show.
Well, remember there were some serious development problems with season 1, I remember.
Yeah.
That probably played into it.
But there's something else too, which is that I've talked to a lot of people who have watched the show since. Most of them didn't watch the show while it was airing, like you and I were, like week to week. Right. And it seems like the people that like kind of binged it later, like almost universally like the show more. And I think some of that might have to do with like, we're kind of in a culture now as TV fans, as people who watch TV, where we dissect things and talk about them. And so there's not a lot of like mystery left over, you know, like if the show properly foreshadows things, you figure them out, you know? But if you're binge watching, you don't really have time to do that, because you're just like moving on to the next episode. You're not dwelling and thinking about it. You're not going like, oh, what does that mean? How does this tie into this?
Because you're just watching the next episode. So you're not contemplating, because, well, why contemplate the answers? The answers that you're contemplating for are just a click away, right? So
yeah, exactly. The contemplation is like after the whole season's done, you know?
Yes.
And so
for us, we were left wondering for an entire week after every episode.
Exactly. Like we'd watch an episode and we'd be thinking about it. And that's why like after episode 2, you and I had both pretty much figured out. We were like I think both about 90% certain about the mystery of the Man in Black.
Yeah.
We kind of like, we were both kind of like like on the same page going like, yeah, I think this is it. And we were like that after episode 2, you know?
Yes.
So it took, I mean, I think the first season was 10 episodes, I think, for Westworld. So, you know, another 8 episodes before they revealed that. So I think stuff like that kind of might be playing a part in it. You know, it kind of cuts down on some of the surprise. So I think that's kind of interesting. And I'm going to be interested in seeing, because a lot of people got into this show later by binge watching it. And I'm going to be interested to see if the show is similar to the first season in that way, if these same people are going to be like, man, this show has just gone to shit or something. And you and I are going to be like, oh, it feels exactly the same.
Yep.
Or, you know, it could be very different. I think they might have learned some lessons from that in the first season, because there was a little bit of backlash about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's Westworld. And that's the last show that we're bringing up. There's some other stuff that we're looking forward to. I mean, right at the very end of May, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt's coming back, but we've kind of already mentioned that briefly about the whole, like, how they're splitting the season and stuff. So there really isn't a lot to talk about.
There's not a lot to talk about. You know, it's Kimmy Schmidt. It's funny.
Yeah.
I don't really feel there's more to say there.
Yeah, we're just looking forward to it. So,
Yeah,
you know, so there are other, just because we didn't mention the show doesn't mean we're not looking forward to it. It just means that there maybe isn't much to talk about in regards to that show. And just because we mentioned the show doesn't mean we're actually looking forward to it either. You know, we might be mentioning a show and being like, this looks like shit.
It's just that there was something interesting about it.
Yeah.
Conversationally.
Exactly. But let's move on to our next topic, which is The Magicians. We're going to be talking about season 3, episode 8, titled 6 Short Stories About Magic. This is a concept episode in that they kind of divided the episode into these 6 separate stories, and they're all interconnected. It's like one story through, basically.
It's one story. It's
perspectives.
It basically follows the structure of a normal episode, except they switch perspectives, like, throughout the episode as stories. So, like, that's like the twist to the episode.
Yeah, like sometimes you'll see something, but you're not quite sure of it, and then you get another character's perspective, and then it's filled in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the episode. What did you think?
I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
What about the silent part, the silent segment?
Yeah. So it was kind of like a revelation that Marlee Matlin's character was the daughter of, like, the head librarian.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't realize it. Like, I was like, oh.
Okay. I think I started putting it together before it was revealed, but like through the course of the episode is when I started putting it together.
Okay.
Like I didn't know, like, last week or anything, you know, like, it was like in the course of this episode, I'm like, wait a minute, you know, and then
knew the episode she was introduced. Yeah.
She just shows up and I'm like, that's her daughter.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's that was kind of an interesting twist, and it was an interesting relationship they developed, where they were able to show kind of how their relationship kind of took this, like, rocky direction, like, partway through it, because the daughter just wanted some independence.
Yeah.
And, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm through with you. It wasn't like that kind of, like, cheap drama. It was like a very believable, like, you know, you have a mother that wants her daughter to stay where it's safe and to not be part of the world because it's not safe, and wants her to be kind of in this library where everything's kind of closed off, but has allowed her to go out, you know, kind of against her wishes, but still allowed it to happen. And how by just the very nature of that, their time has been disconnected. So, like, now she's missing big swaths of her life and stuff. And just it was very human and very, like, interesting in the way it was portrayed, because it was all silent, not the whole episode, this one segment. But what I thought was interesting is that even though it was silent, there was kind of like this low kind of hum, and, like, you could hear things like footsteps and stuff, which I think was kind of like their way of saying, like, of playing into the idea that people who are deaf can, like, feel, like, certain vibrations and stuff, you know? And they pick up on those in a way that we just normally attribute to hearing, but they pick it up, like, through their sense of touch, essentially, but through picking up on the vibrations and things of somebody walking up close behind them. They can sense that someone's behind them because of that, even though they can't hear it, you know? And I think that's kind of the way they left some of the sound kind of in there in this kind of muffled way was for that purpose.
Right.
So yeah, I thought it was really interesting that, I mean, that's of course going to be the part of the episode that gets talked about, you know, because they tried something really different. But I thought the whole episode in general was really good. They even managed to touch in with Elliot and Margot very, very briefly, but enough to give us kind of an idea of what's going on with them.
Yeah. So just an idea though. We actually don't find out what their fate is this episode. Gotta wait for next episode, I guess, for that.
Yeah, which is, you know, I thought I was kind of worried they would do something like this, like we wouldn't get kind of a real answer to what, you know, their fate, because that was such a dramatic part of the last episode.
Right. It was.
But I didn't mind it just because the episode was so good, you know, that like I was able to kind of get past that. I thought it did a lot of things well. I think they're continuing to do a really good job with Felicia Day's character.
Yeah,
and just kind of like, presenting her as this like a very selfish person. But she kind of has a point with certain things about like being herself, you know, and like having the courage to be herself and to present herself as she is. And of course, she's selfish. Like courage doesn't necessarily mean like, you know, conviction or, you know, it just means that she sticks to the truth of who she is. And sometimes that's kind of despicable. Sometimes it's exactly what's needed.
Right.
She's able to kind of break Quentin a little bit out of his funk by, you know, kind of just breaking it out of his system by sleeping with him, you know, and using it as a tool for that specific purpose. And she's able to kind of do certain things that like, you know, where other people were kind of stuck in their own headspace, and she was able just to kind of push forward because she just didn't care. But it makes her kind of a compelling character, a different kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Trying to think. I mean, the big dramatic thing that happened in this episode is that they seem to, the other traveler guy that works for the library seemed to destroy the mirror bridge.
Yeah, well, they make this mirror bridge, right? And they get the traveler woman from season 1 that they rescued, you know. They get her, she has to use her blood to make it, and it's this complicated thing, and there's the sheer, if they get it wrong, you know, she's gonna die, they're gonna die.
Yeah. And while she's keeping this mirror gateway kind of thing, this mirror bridge open, she's basically bleeding out the whole time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So they kind of have this like expectation of expediency, because if they don't, she could just bleed to death, basically. But yeah, I really like the setup of the mirror bridge. I really like the kind of sense of urgency they gave to it. I really like that they played into that by making things that got in the way of that urgency, but that were like very human. Like, you know, like, Penny went to the underworld and encountered, that one guy that got eaten by the dragon.
Right.
And the guy lied to Penny and kind of set him like on a little bit of a goose chase to try to find out where he was going.
Penny encounters a version of...
Do you think it's Alice?
I don't know.
It looks like her, and he seems to think it's her.
It looks like her. He seems to think it's her. She claims that she's not Alice, but it's, at the very least, it's somebody identical looking to Alice who can see the future and is responsible for all the books of everybody in the library.
Yeah.
That contain, like, everybody's, like, life story.
I think it's gonna end up being Alice, and it's something that kind of happens in her future.
Yeah. I think you're correct there.
But it's definitely interesting, the portrayal. It was a gorgeous shot when they're walking down the hallway and her hair is going like all the way down the hall.
Yes. This woman, or this version of Alice, has been driven mad, so she's crazy.
Not the first version of Alice we've seen that's been driven mad.
No, yeah.
We've seen a few versions of Alice through the course of the show, and we've seen some that have been mad.
And Penny sticks around hoping that he can learn something by reading her writing.
Mm-hmm. But he's just reading Quentin's sex scenes.
Sex scenes, yeah, exactly.
He ends up finding out through this whole time of doing this that he's been on a wild goose chase. Like he wasn't given the key wasn't with them. The key was still with the guy who was eaten by the dragon. He still had the key.
Right. Yeah. He buried it.
And it was like a human moment of like, it's interesting because this character is basically, he's a red shirt in a sense. He's like a disposable character.
Right.
And they're taking the idea of that, of like, this is a character that has been taken for granted. And now you're like, hey, I'm here. Nice to see you. You seem to be suffering in this place. yeah, I need you to do something else for me, and then I'm going to continue on moving on, not caring about you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And they play into that idea and like how that would actually affect people and how they deal with that. And then come to the humanity of the moment where Penny realizes, you know, he needs to help this guy as well as just getting the key, you know? And so he ends up setting him up with the library as like the guy was, I mean, it's hard to remember, but like I think he first showed up in the second season as like a cartographer of Fillory. He was like doing the maps.
Oh, that's right. Yep, he was.
They had that whole funny part where the castle disappeared after he had just finished.
Yeah.
He's a map maker. Through all of this, you know, like the library is going to need somebody that's taking care of certain maps. So he gets sent to the map department and everything seems happy about that. And then Penny, he gets the key out to the dragon to send it to Quentin. And then he's like, okay, now I just need to go home. Except that the person that was there with him through this was the girl that died in the poison room last season.
Mm-hmm.
And she betrayed him to the library.
Yep, she betrays Penny to the library.
She turned him in, and now and now his watch begins.
Yes.
To borrow from Game of Thrones.
Which, by the way, speaking of Game of Thrones, it's funny because Penny is in the underworld and he's looking for he's looking for the guy. You know, who the cartographer we were just talking about who had the key, and he's talking to this official or, you know, the officer and trying to get him to give him the information, and he won't. And then like the officer Pay's talking to kind of indicates that Pay can bribe him, and then Pay's like, okay, wait, what do you bribe dead people with? You know? And it turns out like he wanted to know what happened on Game of Thrones, and so Penny is like making some shit up.
Because Penny doesn't know.
Yeah.
Penny doesn't watch Game of Thrones. He has no idea.
Yeah, Penny has no idea. He doesn't know. So he's just making shit up.
So he's talking about like, yeah, and then the British.
Yeah, and then the British guy. He's like, the British guy with
what about the White Walkers? He's like, oh yeah, they're there. And then like the 8 dragons. Like, wait, there's 8 dragons?
Yeah, wait. Oh my god. And then, and that's how they win the Thrones game.
They've done some clever like pop cultural references, a few with Game of Thrones, even just in this season. Let's not forget the great moment between Elliot and Margot where they were trying to avoid having what they were talking about being discovered by speaking in pop culture code.
Yeah. It's really fun. Really fun how they inject that.
But yeah, and then it's just so fitting that Penny, of course, just doesn't care about any of this.
Yeah,
and so he just has to make it up, and it's just like obvious bullshit, but it ends up passing just because out of desperation for any kind of information.
Yeah, desperation for any information. I guess because if you die before your favorite show ends, I guess you really gotta know what happens, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of what they did. It was also interesting that the area where all of these dead people were, where he was talking to this person and where he met up with the cartographer from Fillory, is basically like a refugee camp.
Right.
Because, you know, with magic being gone, kind of everything's all fucked up. Even down in the underworld, everything's just kind of fucked up as they're trying to figure things out. Of course, you know, we're still able to move souls around and stuff because, you know, there's magical creatures and stuff that can be used for that, and they still have magic, but just kind of everything's kind of in this like third world country state right now. In the underworld. But that was kind of interesting. Quentin's story outside of the kind of heist stuff at the library of what he was doing there. Not too terribly much to talk about, I don't think. We already kind of mentioned Felicia Day's character and him. That's kind of about as far as that goes. So that just kind of leaves Alice. Alice kind of has something going on with the library now too. Trying to think, like she ends up getting kind of tempted. She finds a way to get in touch with the traveler for the library, and then uses him to get to the library so she can communicate to the head librarian. They strike up some kind of deal, but we're not really privy to the details on it.
Right, exactly.
But it's going to kind of maybe put her at odds with Quentin, it seems, and she's doing it so that she can gain knowledge she lost from when she was a Niflin.
Right, exactly.
So that's kind of going on with Alice. The other thing is we got the answer to what that powder was, the magic cocaine from the last episode.
It's fairies. It's fairy dust. Literally.
Yeah.
Dust made out of fairies.
Yeah. We see a fair, we get introduced to a fairy who's unknowledgeable about the outside world. I thought that was kind of like a little interesting wrinkle.
Yeah, I thought so too.
When they were talking to her,
actually first saw this fairy a couple episodes back.
Yeah.
Like, I think after Penny first realized he was stuck in the astral plane,
mm-hmm.
you saw this fairy in I think one of the shots,
Yeah.
And then my first thought was oh shit, so the fairies are actually on Earth spying on them, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out that's not the case. But
fairies are basically enslaved and being treated pretty inhumanely by the woman who now owns Break Bills. She's grinding them down and using them as dust to have access to some extent of magic, seemingly just for creature comforts.
Right.
Which involves cutting off the leg of a fairy and grinding it into dust, and it's not really pleasant looking. But the most interesting thing was just how ignorant the fairy was of what's going on with other fairies, and thinking that there aren't any other fairies.
Right, exactly.
Not realizing that over in Fillory, fairies are in a position of strength, Which is interesting because it gives a little humanity to the fairies and their plight, where they are in the story,
Right, definitely, I agree.
You can kind of understand why they might hate humans, because I might hate humans if I was in that situation where I was getting my leg cut off and snorted, as magic cocaine.
On another note, Marlee Matlin's character finds a huge briefcase of fairy dust in the library.
Yeah, which might play into everything that's going on with the fairies and their hostility against the humans if they have that much.
Right, exactly. That's a lot of dead fairies.
Yeah.
Damn.
I was going to mention we end up backtracking a little bit about when I brought up the mirror bridge, but the kind of the big kind of shocker ending is that the traveler, not Penny and not the one that was helping him, but this other guy who's using some of the fairy dust, ends up destroying the mirror bridge while Marlee's character, and also was it Katie that was in there too?
It was a traveler they rescued in season 1.
Okay, so it was the two of them. For some reason, I thought it was Katie in there with her, but
no.
Okay, so it's Marlee and this traveler character gets stuck in the mirror bridge, and it just gets shattered. It's a gorgeous shot. As you just see the glass flying from the mirrors on both sides as the bridge is shattered, and they're lost to this area, But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anything else further comes from that. But it was a powerful scene, because even though the head librarian is on the side of the guy that ended up doing it, she was screaming no when it happened, because it's her daughter.
Right.
Got thrown into the smear and kind of banished into this. And it was just, another kind of killer ending, after last week's too.
Yeah, so Magicians continues to just be good.
Magicians, great show. And we'll continue talking about it, through the season. But let's talk about what's coming up in the week ahead as we end out this show. By the time this podcast is available on Friday, March 2nd, 2018, Be the Beginning. It's an anime series, comes to Netflix. Flint Town, comes to Netflix. Les Famas comes to Netflix. Once Upon a Time returns on ABC for the last time it returns.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, March 4th, 2018, The Good Fight comes back to CBS All Access. So they finally have something else besides Star Trek now that Star Trek's ended its first season. Which, by the way, now that it's ended its first season, I need to get a trial membership and binge that.
Right, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so they have their other of their two shows. The Good Fight is back on now. Wednesday, March 7th, 2018, Hard Sun. We mentioned that in our spring preview. Debuts on Hulu. Hap and Leonard, The Two Bear Mambo, comes to Sundance. This is season 3 of that series. It's a very pulpy show for anybody who hasn't seen it. It's this very pulpy, kind of early 80s set series. And then here's a little interesting tidbit. Heathers on the Paramount Network was supposed to debut on March 7th, but is now taken off the schedule with no return date listed because of the shooting in Florida.
Oh, okay.
So, we don't know if there's actually anything similar to that in the Heathers TV series. There definitely is in the movie. There's things related to like school shootings in the Heathers movie. So I wouldn't be surprised, but it'd be kind of weird if it was in the pilot episode, but I don't know. Haven't seen it, and it's been pulled from the schedule with no return date yet announced. And then Life Sentence comes to the CW. This is a new series about a girl who finds out that he found out she had like an inoperable cancer. She was going to die, so she was living her life like every moment was her last, and then miraculously was cured of cancer, and then now has to face all the consequences of that.
Right.
So it's kind of, it's a similar concept. They even did a show like that before called like, I think No Tomorrow, where a guy was living his life like that. And I was like, and this is kind of like the antithesis of that, of like, oh yeah, live your life like there's no tomorrow. But then when there is a tomorrow, and so that's what Life Sentence seems to be about. Then Thursday, March 8th, 2018, The Oath debuts on Crackle. Crackle having a lot of kind of interesting shows they've been putting out. Champions comes to NBC. This is from Mindy Kaling. It's about a guy who finds out that he has a son that he didn't know about. It gets kind of saddled on him. It's kind of like Big Daddy, the Adam Sandler movie, basically.
Right, sure. Yeah. So overdone.
Then Marvel's Jessica Jones also on Thursday, March 8th.
Yes.
So a day earlier than normal. So just a hint so everybody knows, Marvel shows drop like right at the stroke of midnight Pacific time. So if you're staying up late on Wednesday night, that's when you can watch Marvel's Jessica Jones.
Right, yeah.
That's why I said, even though we record the podcast on Thursday, I might have finished the series by the time we do next week's podcast, because I'm going to binge quite a bit of it. Then Friday, March 9th, 2018, Love is back on Netflix. Did you watch the second season? I know you started it. Did you finish it?
No, I did not.
I didn't even get started on the second season, but that's back on Netflix. Sneaky Pete is back on Amazon. That's a show. That's one of those shows that falls into that Amazon conundrum of I hate the interface, so I don't watch anything on it. I'm gonna watch The Tick, but I mean, shit, like I think I'd watch the hell out of Sneaky Pete, but until it'll play on Chromecast and the interface doesn't like drive me insane every time I use it, I'm probably not going to watch it. And then Collateral comes back to Netflix. So that is it. That's what's coming up in the week ahead. Next week, more Magicians and The Tick. So until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. Check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, TVEnthusiast.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for listening. TV Enthusiast tuning out.
Good night.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage of